Welcome to FISM News. I'm Samuel Case.
And I'm Renata Kiss.
And tonight, Trump's attempted assassin appears in court.
Meanwhile, the Secret Service announces a major overhaul.
And Iran blames the U.S. for its own nuclear advancement. All right. Well, of course, we begin with even more fallout from the second assassination attempt against Donald Trump. The suspect, a 58-year-old man by the name of Ryan Wesley Ruth, appeared in a Florida federal court yesterday. He could actually be seen smiling and laughing during his appearance, according to court reporters. Ruth has a lengthy criminal record and is now being charged with illegally owning a firearm while being a convicted felon. At the same time, he's also being charged for possessing a gun with a destroyed serial number as well. He faces up to 20 years in prison for those two charges alone, with more charges likely on the way. While a motive is still being investigated, Ruth does have a history of backing Democratic causes since at least 2019 and has previously posted online about Trump being a so-called threat to democracy. Speaking to Fox News, Trump said he, that is the shooter, believed the rhetoric of Biden and Harris and he acted on it. Trump said their rhetoric is causing me to be shot at. Meanwhile, Trump's running mate, J.D. Vance, is calling on Democrats and the media to soften their language about the former president.
If you tell the American people that this person is the end of democracy, if you tell the American people that this person needs to be eliminated, most of them, thank God, are going to ignore you, but some crazy person is going to take matters into their own hands and actually listen to the crazy rhetoric that you're putting out there.
Meanwhile, major questions still remain about the shooter himself and perhaps more importantly, how on earth a second assassination attempt even happened in the first place. FISM's Ian Patrick has more.
The FBI and Secret Service have announced a joint investigation into this second assassination attempt against the former president, as questions on how and why this almost happened again are continuing to float around. Since his arrest, information on the would-be assassin has trickled out into various reports. Ironically, however, much of that information tends to add more questions than actually provide answers to previous ones. For example, the shooter was actually a resident of Hawaii since 2018, but was still somehow able to find and locate President Trump at his golf course in Florida the day of the attempted assassination. That specific issue was brought up by local police when Martin County, Florida Sheriff Will Snyder suggested that it's worth investigating the possibility of a wider conspiracy at play.
I think what we're finding out, he's not from this area, which of course raises the bigger question is, how does a guy from not here get all the way to Trump International, realize that the president, former president of the United States is golfing, and is able to get a rifle in that vicinity? I think that's the question the FBI, the Secret Service are laser focused on today. Is this guy part of a conspiracy? Is he a lone gunman? If he's a lone gunman, President Trump is that much safer because we have him. But if he's part of a conspiracy, then this whole thing really takes on a very ominous tone.
Former FBI Assistant Director Chris Swecker expressed a similar concern to Newsweek, saying the following, quote, "There are only three possible answers. He guessed and got very lucky. He conducted surveillance on Trump and followed him to the golf course, or he had inside information about Trump's schedule. The last answer is scary and has implications that another person was involved." Other details, meanwhile, have been unveiled on the shooter's life and activities prior to his arrest. He was reportedly passionate about the war in Ukraine. He had a website where he attempted to raise money for the Ukrainian effort in defending its home, and he also tried to recruit some former Afghan soldiers to join him in helping Ukraine on the ground. But the biggest questions revolve around his perception of former President Trump. His social media posts, at least in June of 2020, seemed to be in support of Trump and his re-election bid at the time. But sometime after that post, and for a currently unknown reason, his opinion on Trump seems to have become more negative. In fact, he publicly began supporting President Biden and Vice President Harris, as well as the Democrat Party at large. Similar to both Trump and Vance's assertions, other Republicans are wondering if the Democrat rhetoric on the Republican candidate is actually fueling such assassination attempts. This exact issue was brought up by Florida Attorney General Ashley Moody today.
It was really disappointing to hear the president say that President Trump should be put in a bullseye just days before we saw the first assassination attempt, and then weeks later at the DNC say that that threat was still very much alive, and now again, in under 30 days, another assassination attempt.
Regardless, people want answers. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis said that Americans deserve the truth about the would-be assassin and how he was able to get within 500 yards of the former president and current GOP nominee. DeSantis has also ordered a more local investigation into the matter.
I'm signing an executive order assigning the case involving the attempted assassination of former President Donald Trump to the Office of Statewide Prosecutor under the supervision of Attorney General Ashley Moody. The suspect, Ryan Ralph, is believed to have committed state law violations across multiple judicial circuits in the state.
We will continue to monitor all of these investigations and information as it comes out. But for now, this is Ian Patrick reporting for FISM News.
Thanks for that report, Ian. And if domestic threats on Trump weren't enough, a Pakistani terror suspect has pleaded not guilty yesterday to assassination attempt charges of the former president. A Brooklyn federal court charged Asif Mirshan with attempting to assassinate Donald Trump as part of a murder-for-hire conspiracy tied to the Iranian government. Attorney General Merrick Garland said in a statement, quote, "The Justice Department will not tolerate Iran's efforts to target our country's public officials and endanger our national security." He continued, "As these terrorism and murder-for-hire charges against Asif Mirshan demonstrate, we will continue to hold accountable those who would seek to carry out Iran's lethal plotting against Americans." Mirshan's court hearing happened on the same day that Ryan Wesley Ruth appeared in a Florida court for possession of firearms related to Trump's assassination attempt at his golf course on Sunday, just as we've mentioned. And the two parallel events, though, seem coincidental as of this reporting. And elsewhere, President Biden responded to Trump's Florida assassination attempt by saying that the Secret Service needs more assistance and that Congress has the power to help. Here he is.
I think thank God the president's okay. I think we got a full report so far. We're down there tonight. But one thing I want to make clear, the service needs more help. And I think the Congress should respond to their needs if they, in fact, need more services.
When a reporter asked him about specific action the Secret Service needs, Biden responded, quote, "They may decide whether they need more personnel." His comments come as Republicans in Congress have accused Biden of not providing enough security for the former president.
Meanwhile, the Secret Service director says the agency actually needs way more than just resources. Yesterday, Acting Director Ronald Rao called for a complete overhaul of the agency's methodologies in light of the current threat level.
Coming out of Butler, I have ordered a paradigm shift. The Secret Service's protective methodologies work, and they are sound, and we saw that yesterday. But the way we are positioned right now in this dynamic threat environment, it has given me guidance to say, you know what, we need to look at what our protective methodology is. We need to get out of a reactive model and get to a readiness model.
Now, Rao did not go into any details about what these changes would actually look like at this time, but the announcement does come at a rather pivotal moment for the Secret Service, as a recent Associated Press NORC poll found only about 30% of Americans are highly confident in the agency's ability to protect presidential candidates ahead of the November election. All right, and coming up next, we'll look overseas where we'll get all the latest updates on the Middle East and much more. We'll be right back after this short break.
Hi, I'm Aisha. At first, I was debating whether or not I was really pregnant and took a test. While I was waiting, they talked to me about different pregnancy choices and different options and information that helped me be more educated. To confirm, I got an ultrasound of the pregnancy test, and it was for sure positive, and I got to hear and see my baby for the first time. Hearing the heartbeat made me cry, and it was certain that I was going to keep my baby forever.
There are moments in life that define us. Choices determine the courses we take. Choices that create life, or those that save a life. And some make life worthwhile. There are decisions to stay, or to go, to remain the same, or to grow. Sometimes we pray and make peace. Other times we take a stand for what we believe. In celebration, mourning, triumph, and defeat, we are invested in every decision we seek. Despite differences, we have one thing in common, the desire to do all for the glory of God. Keep your wallet aligned with your heart and your investments in harmony with your faith. Timothy Plan, biblically responsible mutual funds, ETFs, and retirement plans. Before investing, carefully consider a fund's investment objective, risks, charges, and expenses contained in the prospectus available at timothyplan.com. Read carefully before investing.
Do you know what you are supporting when you purchase mutual funds and stocks? Think about it. When you invest in a company, you make a decision to support the things that that company supports. And it may not be things that you agree with. Financial Issues is a ministry teaching people like you how to invest biblically, responsibly, keeping your investments clear of companies that may support an ungodly agenda. Learn more by going to financialissues.org. Financialissues.org.
Welcome back to FISM News. I'm Renata Kiss. Well, as promised, let's continue with our international coverage. A senior Biden advisor is cautioning Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu against a wider conflict in Lebanon. Senior advisor Amos Hochstein does not believe that a war with Hezbollah would benefit displaced Israelis. Sources close to Hochstein told Axios that a broader conflict would only lead to a longer war in the Middle East. His warning comes as the IDF has been ramping up its military forces for a war against Hezbollah, despite an earlier meeting with the U.S. where the country discussed a potential de-escalation. Hochstein's anti-war advice comes amid deep political struggles in the Israeli government, especially concerning Netanyahu and Defense Minister Yoav Gallant's fractured relationship. According to Reuters, Netanyahu may replace Gallant with a more hawkish defense minister soon.
Meanwhile, in other news today, Iran's president is now blaming the U.S. for ramping up its own nuclear program in what is his first news conference since becoming president. President Masoud Pezeshkian said Iran has been put into a rather tough position where it's being forced to advance its weapons program because the U.S. withdrew from the 2015 nuclear deal. He told a reporter, that is, from the AP, "I think we said many times we do not want to do this at all. We want to solve our technical and scientific needs. We are not looking for nuclear weapons." He said, "We adhered to the framework written in the nuclear deal, and we are still looking to maintain those frameworks. They tore them. That would be the U.S. They forced us to do something." That deal was withdrawn from the U.S. In 2018 under President Trump, who said at the time that it was just too favorable to Iran. Pezeshkian's comment come as Iran, according to the AP, has been enriching uranium up to 60% purity, which is just a short technical step away from weapons-grade levels at 90%.
At the same time, the Houthis in Yemen are claiming they downed another U.S. Reaper drone yesterday. A video circulating online apparently showed a surface-to-air missile strike that resulted in a blown-up wreckage on the ground. Houthi military spokesperson Yahya Saree claimed he identified the wreckage as an MQ-9 drone, although he did not say how he came to that conclusion. Newsmax reports that the U.S. military did not immediately comment on the fate of the drone or that they lost any aircraft. It's worth noting that the Houthis have exaggerated claims in the past when talking about their aggression in the Red Sea. The Houthis have been assaulting Western commercial ships in the Red Sea since the war in Gaza started, despite claiming they were targeting ships linked to the U.S., Israel, and the UK.
And of course, that's not the only concern for the U.S., which has now detected and tracked Russian military aircraft near Alaska's airspace 4 separate times in 7 days. NORAD says the aircraft remained in international airspace at the time while describing the activity as, quote, regular. The alerts add that the planes were not seen as a threat, but the apparent uptick does come after this summer when both Chinese and Russian warplanes were spotted together near Alaska's airspace. Alaska Senator Dan Sullivan believes the U.S. is now being tested and should respond appropriately.
I agree with NORAD to the certain degree that it's not a direct threat to our state right now, but is this something that we need to try to prevent and show American military strength in Alaska to deter? You better believe it.
And over in Africa, the U.S. has fully withdrawn its military and its assets from Niger in a move that is sure to benefit terrorists. A Pentagon statement said final forces left on Sunday, and there is now just embassy staff left in the country. That's in keeping with the deal struck in May between the U.S. and the nation's controlling military junta, which prefers ties with Russia. The U.S. Air Force based in Niger provided key counterterrorism surveillance and support to fight ISIS in the Middle East. And we have plenty more news coming up next. We'll be right back after a moment in history.
Welcome back to A Moment in History. I'm Seth Udinsky. On July 3rd, 1863, one day short of 87 years after the birth of the United States, there was a battle charge that very well would either have saved the nation or severed it forever. That day, in the little town of Gettysburg in Pennsylvania, that had become the most important battlefield of the Civil War, thousands of Confederate soldiers made an epic assault on the Union front at Cemetery Ridge in an attempt to win the Battle of Gettysburg and surround Washington, D.C., likely then upsetting the Union and winning the war. There was never a charge like it up until that point in U.S. history, and there has hardly been one since, a march that became known in history as Pickett's Charge. After 2 days of brutal fighting, the rebels rolled the dice on the third and final day as General Robert E. Lee ordered the division of Major General George E. Pickett to make an all-out assault across a mile-wide field with almost no cover in an attempt to break through the Union line just south of Gettysburg. The assault was massive. Roughly 15,000 rebels marched west to east from Seminary Ridge in the final effort to win the battle. Now, historians have called this the last medieval battle charge in history, and in many ways it was. Soldiers on horseback and on foot rushing into battle to slam the enemy ranks and overpower them in hand-to-hand combat. Union soldiers described the onslaught afterwards as a massive sea of gray coming towards them, and had it not been for the unfortunate occasion of warfare and bloodshed, it would have been a truly inspirational and even beautiful sight otherwise. But the rebels could not break through the Union ranks, and this moment proved to be the closest that the rebels ever got to winning the war. It has since been dubbed the high watermark of the Confederacy. Now, the onslaught of rebels, unprotected from Union bullets with virtually no coverage in this open field, proved to be an almost unfairly easy target for Union sharpshooters and cannons. Hundreds of rebels were picked off before they could even make it to the Union ranks. Now, those that did were repelled by the Federals under the command of General George Meade, and sure enough, the Confederates were dealt a fatal blow from which they could never truly recover. Now, Robert E. Lee was devastated at the defeat and took personal responsibility for the thousands of Southern soldiers killed. Now, General George Pickett also put responsibility on Lee. He never forgave him for the decision to assault the Union line, saying of Lee afterward, "That old man had my division slaughtered." Now, the failure of Pickett's charge ended the Battle of Gettysburg in Union victory, and as it turned out, Gettysburg turned the tide of the war in favor of the Union. The Confederates had lost their chance to take the capital city, and they would never get another chance again. After almost 2 more long years of fighting, with the Union Army now reborn under the command of General U.S. Grant, the South's strength and resolve slipped, and the war ended in 1865 with a Union victory. So on July 4th, 1776, the Union was born, and the argument can be made that on July 3rd, 1863, when Pickett's charge could not break the ranks of the United States Army, the Union was saved. Thanks so much for joining me once again for A Moment in History.
Are you new to biblically responsible investing? As Christians, we have the responsibility to be good stewards of the money God has entrusted us with. As we invest in the market, we want to make sure that the companies we invest in aren't taking money and using it to fund industries that grieve the heart of God, like pornography, abortion, gambling, or the LGBT agenda. That doesn't mean a company must be a Christian company to be biblically responsible. It means that company is solely focused on excellence in its industry and doesn't support things that God hates. To learn more about biblically responsible investing and how you can put it to practice in your portfolio, go to financialissues.org.
The mission of Financial Issues is to expose Jesus for all he is, all he means, and all that he can do.
On the day I found I was pregnant, I was full of emotions and I just was so overwhelmed, and I don't know if I'm ready for this huge life-altering, changing commitment. I had individuals around me not wanting me to have this child. And somehow, and I was driving and I saw the Women's Help Center sign and I immediately turned in. That just took relief off of me, and I was like, you know what? It's gonna be okay. They gave me the confidence and the support that I needed to be able to go out and face the world. First time I held Finnegan, I just lit up with joy. I was so excited. This little boy that I had in my life, he is loving and generous. Watching him just grow and flourish into this incredible human being has just been so rewarding and so uplifting. Looking back, I don't know what I would do without him, because I needed him more than I think he needed me.
All right, and welcome back to FISM News. I'm Samuel Case. We begin in the fight for life in this segment, where pro-life voters down in Florida's Palm Beach County are now accusing a pro-abortion group of forging their own signatures on a petition to add an abortion measure to the November ballot. Amendment 4 would establish a right to abortion in the state constitution and has already gained enough signatures to appear on the ballot this November. But now, at least some of those signatures are being called into question. In a complaint to state election authorities, one pro-life voter said, quote, "Someone signed my name on a petition asking the government to stay out of abortion control. I'm pro-life and I would never sign that." Other voters have shared similar complaints, and now Governor Ron DeSantis says the state will have zero tolerance for any kind of election fraud.
This group submitted dozens of petitions on behalf of dead people. They saw those petitions being submitted. There are other petitions that have actually been validated where the signatures do not match the voter files. Our tolerance in the state of Florida for any type of election-related fraud is zero.
And speaking of abortion, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton is challenging a Biden administration rule that would hide abortions and other reproductive health information from criminal investigations. The lawsuit brought by the AG says the proposed rule is meant to block pro-life states from enforcing abortion bans. The rule itself says it is a response to the Supreme Court's 2022 Dobbs decision. The federal health agency says it's meant to protect women from having the information used against her, a doctor, or a loved one. However, there are no state laws that punish women for seeking an abortion. Critics have called it a solution in search of a problem and argue that it endangers women by protecting medical malpractice. The Biden administration rule is set to go into effect in December.
Two very concerning abortion stories there. Elsewhere, TikTok finally got its day in court yesterday, pushing back against a bill that would require it to be sold by its Chinese owners ByteDance or be banned here in the U.S. TikTok and ByteDance both filed a lawsuit against the DOJ back in May, claiming the bill violates the First Amendment and will set a quote-unquote dangerous precedent. The DOJ, meanwhile, argues the bill is about national security, not free speech, saying China could use the app for malign foreign influence and to steal sensitive data. A TikTok spokesperson said, "We remain confident we will prevail in court," saying the Constitution is on our side. The case isn't expected to be decided until after the November election, and there's certainly a possibility it will end up before the Supreme Court.
And elsewhere, a new study shows that DEI programs, which stand for diversity, equity, and inclusion, do not have any impact on work environments. A meta-analysis study published by the National Library of Medicine synthesized 492 studies saying that DEI trainings designed to eliminate so-called racial bias from the workplace have little to no effect on employees. The study concluded that while people may believe in the concepts of DEI trainings, it often doesn't reflect in their daily behavior. According to conservative advocates against DEI, the meta-analysis proves that these trainings are a waste of time and money since they don't produce the results that equity organizations like the National Equity Project claimed they would. And we're not surprised by that, of course.
Right. It is ironic they're pursuing these things, and not only does it not do what they want, but we're also seeing that it's having really negative impacts on the companies themselves because, as we've covered, that conservatives are abandoning these companies in droves, so they're losing customers, and it's not even doing what it's supposed to do, and it's honestly probably doing the opposite of what it's supposed to do.
Yeah, absolutely. No one likes to be told what to think or how to behave, especially in a workplace where adults usually know or should know how to behave. So
yeah, that's right. You could definitely breeds resentment, and that's really no good.
Yeah, definitely. Good point.
All right, and to wrap up today's show on a good note, in case you don't know, today is Constitution Day, which of course celebrates the signing of what else but of course the U.S. Constitution, and marking the 237th birthday of the U.S. government. 39 founding fathers signed their names to the Constitution on this day back in 1787, declaring themselves "We the people of the United States." The founding document explains how the government works, what its limits are, and of course enshrining rights to the citizens, all in the Bill of Rights. But this vital document actually wasn't given its own National Day of Observance until as recent as 2004, which makes this the 20th official Constitution Day in U.S. history. And I'm going to be honest, until reporting on this story today, I don't think I realized there even was such a thing as a Constitution Day, but we've had 20 of them so far.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And I think instead of DEI trainings, they should maybe do Constitution Day trainings.
yeah, maybe. I mean, it would certainly bring much more unity since all those principles of unity and equality are right there in the Constitution.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, that's our program for today. Thank you so much for joining us, and please visit FISMnews.tv for more content.
And for any updates until tomorrow's show, be sure to check us out on social media at FISM News, or by the way, you can also download the FISM app to your smartphone. Take our news wherever you go. Thanks so much, God bless, and we'll see you tomorrow night.
When it comes to money, I always have so many questions. I never know where to go to get answers to those questions. They never really teach you this stuff in school, like some of the best ways to handle it, how to save, when to invest, where to invest, even just what to do with the money. And if I put it in the stock market, what's the best way to protect from losing it all? That fear can be paralyzing. You don't really know what decisions to make. As a Christian, I don't want to give my money to people who are going to use it for things that God hates. When I discovered financial issues, it was like a burden was lifted off my shoulders. Not only did I gain access to a simple investment strategy that I can manage myself, I also have the peace of mind that my money will not be going to companies that actively promote things that God hates. Financial issues has allowed me to experience peace in my investments.
Invest your money in a God-honoring way. Go to financialissues.org.